All right, we're live now. Welcome, Alan, to the Tech Frontiers. I think it's going to be a fantastic talk today. I want to give a little bit of background to Alan from what I know. He's the founder of Battle STEM Coach. It's an online tutoring service for kids who are trying to excel at AP exams. The reason I want to talk to Alan was because he is extremely tech savvy. He is at the bleeding edge of whatever's going on at all times, and applying and figuring out how to apply it to himself and to his business. So I thought it might be a very fitting conversation for the Tech Frontiers episode. So welcome to the podcast, Alan.
Thanks for having me here, Jam.
All right. The first thing I want to start with is just want to learn about your background, is how you got to be where you are right now, and we can take it from there.
Yeah, so I actually started off studying electrical engineering. I was always good at math and science, and so I studied electrical engineering. I did my undergraduate at UC Berkeley. I did a master's at Stanford University, and I actually worked as an engineer for 11 years, which is probably why I do more tech stuff than maybe other teachers or tutors out there. But ever since my time in Berkeley, I actually really enjoyed tutoring students. I was part of Electrical Engineering Honor Society called HKN or Eta Kappa Nu, and we provided tutoring services. One of the many things that they did was provide tutoring services, and I fell into that pretty quickly. Like I enjoyed being. We were given an office from the department, like a room, a small room.
Yeah.
With the promise that we would provide tutoring for students, so other electrical engineering students and things like that. And so I began tutoring there, and I enjoyed doing that. My wife now, but girlfriend at the time said, like, don't use your TA voice on me, okay? So like I had the teaching voice apparently pretty early on when I was trying to explain things to people. And I continued that. I worked as an engineer, and I was good at it. I was fine. Like it was good. I worked at AMD, which is a doing chip design, and I worked as some energy efficiency consulting. But I really always kept tutoring, like as a volunteer. And then in 2017, I thought, what would it be like to have it as a business? I explored it. What would online tutoring look like? What would it be like? Or maybe local tutoring, hence the name of the business being primarily local at first. And I really enjoyed it, even though I had two young kids and I was putting in extra time because I had a full-time job and then I was tutoring on the side. I really enjoyed it. And it grew from there, honestly. And it grew into a larger program. By 2019, it was large enough that I had to take the leap, quit my job to take it full time. And then in 2020, pandemic hit. I was already 90% online at that point. I went 100% online, and I've been growing the business since. And now we do group programs. We help like over 100. About this past year, we did about 150 students go through and help them out in their AP classes.
That's fantastic. So you were always good at the tests, I believe, and your background brought you here. What I want to ask about is when back in 2022, when I was working full time at a company before starting Study Spaces, or the company before that, I had this moment where I was like, should I quit or should I do this part time? And it was a very agonizing decision because for months I dragged it along and thinking that I'm going to do it just now and just now. So kind of take me back to that process where you said 2019 where you took it full time. What was that decision? How was that feeling? How did that conversation go with the family and everything?
Yeah, that's a great question. That was a very difficult decision. I was lucky my employer wanted me to, like, I was able to negotiate going down to 75% time. So I did 30 hours a week, and that allowed me to grow to the business. And then I was putting in about 20 hours a week into the business. But yeah, to lose that engineering salary and then convert it into something to do full time, where like I was the only provider. I had two kids at the time. We have a third one now, but at the time we had two kids that were pretty young, and I was the sole provider. And it was not easy. I think my in-laws probably felt a little nervous that I was giving up an engineering job. They're like, "You're like gonna do what? You're gonna go tutor instead of being an engineer?" Like, because they considered that as a downgrade in terms
Yeah.
of income and stability for the family.
Yeah.
My wife
Mm,
was actually very supportive on this front, but
mm,
we did, which I couldn't have done it without her. But we did have to. We really thought about it, and we're actually Christians, so we prayed a lot about it. And setting direction. But it's a big leap of faith to try to go from working 20 hours and and having a engineering salary and trying to replace that.
yeah.
Um, was a long process.
Mm,
I felt very lucky and blessed to take that leap, was able to get
mm,
more students, grow my network, grow my connections, and build out a business. But yeah, that was it was not an easy decision to make. It
yeah.
definitely
Yeah.
weighed a lot on our minds.
Absolutely. And I'm gonna ask this one deep question about it. One last one. Um, I ask this question very often from people. There is parts and times in the business where, especially early on, where it feels like it was a mistake. That yeah, this was the wrong decision, because it's never all nice and sunny all the time. So, did you have those moments after that 2019, after you quit your job, and you had a moment where you realize, hey, maybe this was the wrong decision, and what made you kind of continue on and persevere?
Yeah, the only one for the most part I loved what I was doing. The
Mm,
only moment of hesitation I had was um as the kids were getting older and I was tutoring locally and online and I was tutoring a lot like, you know, evening weekend
I see.
hours.
Mm, mm,
And
mm,
my kids were young enough that they weren't in school
yeah.
yet. They had some daycare and things
Hmm.
like that, but they weren't in school yet. But there was, looking ahead, I was like, oh, what is it going to look like? You know, they come home from school and then I'm off tutoring or on the weekends, right? Like, where is the time? Because I would need a tutor during the day while
Yeah.
they're in school. That would be the ideal scenario. And so, that was one pivotal point because at that time then I was thinking maybe I should go teach in a classroom. You know, I never taught in a classroom before, so I started to look at like what would that look like, but I'd have to go back to school, pay money.
Yeah.
Definitely would be a reduction in salary, but at
Yeah.
least then I would feel like I would have hours that overlapped more with when the kids were in school.
Yeah. Mm,
So that was probably the only like moment of hesitation on this was just to say like how is this going to look in the future?
right. Right. That makes
And
sense.
there were a couple of things that came out along that way that made a huge difference is me joining the teacher project and doing some other these other things that marketing and group programs to grow the business out,
Yeah.
where I'm still involved in the teaching side of things, but allowed me a lot more flexibility. But had that not come along, I don't know where, honestly, like the direction of the business would have gone at that point.
That makes sense. Makes sense. And I think a lot of the maybe tutors who are listening to this, they may be thinking the same thing about their own time spent and about their lifestyle. They say, hey, is this an end to it? I guess in the startup world, we think of it in terms of, hey, we have this business and it's a software business. You know, it gives us flexibility into when or where we can work on it. And it lets us maybe sleep at night a little better. But
Mhm.
when you have to do like an actual physical work of maybe going there and then doing tutoring, and it's time based, and I feel like that might really scare people away,
Mhm.
especially if your livelihood, yeah, and household depends on it.
Yeah.
So tell me about what the business is today, and what are you guys doing these days, and maybe like how did that change since 2019?
Yeah, so I used to be a one-on-one tutor, you know, I would
Mm,
meet students online, Zoom, or I used a platform called Wyzant.
yeah.
But you know, I was an online tutor and I had a number of students
Hmm.
that way. And then the transition is now what we do are group programs for AP Physics. And I picked AP Physics specifically. I actually could tutor a lot of subjects, and I do help tutor a lot of subjects for other students, but for the most part, AP Physics is like the main core of the program, AP Physics 1 specifically. And it came out because I realized that there were a lot of gaps in like students' knowledge. Like I would get a lot of people would hire me to do AP Physics tutoring, but I was like, there's a lot of gaps here. Like I can help you with some things, but like it's like I have to like teach you the whole material too.
Yeah.
And so then we decided to build out programs that were designed to say like, hey, we're going to not only just help you with your schoolwork, not just help you like learn and do problems, but actually teach you it along the way, like
Yeah.
teach you the entire thing. Because I felt like I was just kind of putting band-aids on little holes and I couldn't fix the underlying issue, which is that they
Right.
weren't having a strong foundation in the actual concepts. And they also need a lot more help. Like once a week, yeah, the students would be okay. We'd catch up on the week, but every week it would just be playing catch up and just patching something, right?
Right.
And then I didn't have the bandwidth or the time to do like 2 or 3 times with an individual student.
Yeah.
And so that's where we kind of scaled up the program to provide not only the help support, but the teaching portion of it as well.
Yeah.
And we've added in things like them doing practice tests for the AP exam, them actually submitting homework so we can review and give feedback. Because when you're one-on-one, you can you just stare at them while they do work, right? Not very efficient, but you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so now we have them submit work. We give feedback of it. We use a lot of technology. We use Looms. Jam, I send Looms a lot.
Yes.
Looms on pretty much any time they have a question, we send a Loom, a video back annotating, because I think like that part is a way more efficient delivery of like what I want them to understand than just like writing notes or go watch this other video or related video and try it again. We just pinpoint exactly, this is what you did wrong. Boom. Kind of in a couple of minutes, they understand and then they can go fix it. And we've improved the how quickly they can get caught up if they're behind in AP Physics.
Fantastic. So this has matured into a lot more flexible and scalable business now, with multiple tutors helping you in running this. How do you see this growing in the next couple of years? Are you planning on getting to thousands of students?
My goal is to help as many students through AP Physics 1 as possible. And so there's a few different scaling things that we're talking about. I don't want to necessarily have a huge team. So I leverage a lot of tech to try to make it like a small team. Like for those 140, 150 students, it's me and 6 other tutors, right?
Yeah.
So like that's the size of the team.
Yeah.
And by leveraging some of the technology stuff, we can reach more students, help more students, still provide a high level of service, because that's our primary goal, our primary mission. With the same team and people who are really, really good, really, really passionate about it. But I want to reach more students. So that's also trying to make up programs that are also really good, but more affordable because, hiring a one-on-one tutor is probably the most expensive way to get help. Mm-hmm. Part of the group programs we do is much, much cheaper. Like honestly, like I would charge like a lot for one-on-one tutoring and they can get way more than 1 hour of tutoring. For 1 hour or for 2 hours of tutoring, they get like all this support over a month. So the goal is to grow out the number of students, but reach more students. And so that's why there's the YouTube channel. That's why we provide freer resources, or at least lower cost resources for those who can't do it. We do sometimes do scholarships. See, one of the advantages of being at scale is sometimes there are people like, we just can't afford, like that's just like way too much, way beyond our budget. But I've done deals with kids and I said, like, look, if you, for this month, you pay for a month, and if you are willing to put in the work and you show me in that month that you're committed to doing work, then you can stay into the program, right? And that would not be possible as a one-on-one tutor or anything like that. And so I do those kinds of things because I'm trying to reach the students who really want to learn and they just don't have, like, the schools and the systems in places are just not there to set them up for success.
Agree. And I brought up this point to the association that we're part of. There was this interesting stat that I came across is related to group tutoring and in general, actually tutoring prevalence in different countries. And when it was comparing US to some of the Southeast countries, and even like where I'm from, Uzbekistan, we have tutoring that is so prevalent. Like almost any kid will get private tutoring outside of the school hours. But the reason it's affordable is because it's group tutoring. You just cannot, like, no one has the time or the money to afford private tutoring. So almost 99% of the cases it's group tutoring. So I was kind of wondering about the, why group tutoring is not that popular in the US. And then people had some opinions. So I want to kind of hear your thoughts as to, I'm very, very sympathetic to this kind of business model where you can reach more students through group tutoring, through these more scalable solutions, so that it brings down the cost of tutoring for families to afford, but at the same time, it increases the number of people who can now receive this private education. So I want to kind of hear your thoughts on that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Part of it is a bit cultural. I think like there are people who just feel like one-on-one tutor is the common model in this country. If you're needing support, you get like a one-on-one specialist. Because if you think of things like speech therapy or physical therapy or things like that, they tend to be that kind of one-on-one dedicated support kind of thing. So it's culturally, I think that's very, very common to see. It's also culturally not as common to get tutoring overall. So like it's more common to just rely on the school system, because the school system has historically been pretty strong and has done a good job. I mean, there's always a question. People always say like schools are failing and things like that. But like it did a decent job. It did the role. And so there's a lot of not resistance, but not as common to get tutorings, except for those because it was kind of more expensive. I think if you see more and more people wanting and needing tutoring, then like the price can definitely go down. But like that's like, again, it's just culturally not a very common mode. I think it's actually a mistake to think that one-on-one tutoring is superior because of the time part, right? Like the thing is like me individually as like a one-on-one, when I met like maybe once a week for the same price, like honestly kids get like way better support than was possible when I was doing one-on-one tutoring. So I honestly think that it's not a model. It's a model for one-on-one tutoring. It's a model that doesn't provide a lot of great results ultimately for a very large number of students. Right. There are specific cases where you do want that one-on-one support.
Yeah.
Like my son my youngest son is autistic. He uses the ABA therapy. He does some individual work, but he does a lot of group work too. But he did a lot of individual work early on because of the special needs. But I think you'll find that most people are like that's not a very, very strong, compelling model.
I see.
I think just people think that individual tutoring, you get that kind of very high personalization, which is not incorrect. You do get a high level of personalization. I think the challenge is with groups, if you do it the right way, you still get that personalization, but you just get a lot more support.
Right. And this actually leads us into an interesting discussion regarding. I recently watched a very good debate on AI in classrooms and just the dream of personalization and at scale, especially with the current advancements in AI. Everyone in the education sector is thinking about personalization, dreaming about personalization. They're doing things in to make these changes in the classrooms, from K-12 to higher education to all the way to workforce. The counter argument to this whole thing is that the social aspects of learning is also like not to be ignored in this case. So that when people do things in groups, and group tutoring is an example, there's a lot of other things that's happening that may not be captured by completely personalizing and individualizing learning on a student level. And I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts about like whether this connects in your head to the classrooms and this AI personalization era that may be looming.
Yeah, because I kind of think there's two different parts to that question. One is like group socialization and learning in groups. I think that's super important. One of the problems I found with one-on-one tutoring is that like I would get them the grades, they would get into the college they wanted to, then they got to college and they didn't know how to use college. They're like, they only thought about getting into college, and then they were there. They're like, I don't know how to learn from a professor. I don't know how to do office hours. I don't know how to go to discussion sections and get the help I need because I've been so
Right.
dependent on a one-on-one tutor to get me there, to
Sure.
get me into college.
Right.
And so then they would reach out, hey, can you help them out? That happened almost with every single one-on-one student I had. There were
Wow.
even the ones that I had, like a couple go to Stanford.
Yeah.
And they reach out back to me, right? These are very, very sharp kids, right?
Yeah.
They reach
Yeah.
out back to me. It's like, can you help me out with my Stanford class?
Right.
And it's like, there's this codependency that's built. That's just like how you need to learn in a social environment. You need to like to know, because in the real world, we learn in groups. We don't have one-on-one. You have a mentor maybe, but you learn from other people around you. You learn from in that community, and you have to take ownership of your own learning journey, not just through college, but through your career. So I think that's a huge, huge, huge portion. With the group tutoring program, I have no students go to the college, then come back and tell me like, oh, can you help me out with this class? Like that very rarely happens now, because we've built them some skills for them to be successful in groups.
That is
Now,
such a great insight.
yeah. The second part of your question was about the AI portion. Like, how does AI, and man, we could talk about AI like all day long in terms of what it's doing.
Yeah.
I think I'm having a like I can see that AI has the potential to be very personalized and very up there.
Yeah.
Right now, that's difficult because the way like ChatGPT and things work, because I interact with it a lot,
Yeah.
it's very generalized. It has really, really good knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily explain it in the way that the student would like necessarily understand. Like, it answers the question, it can solve the problem,
Right.
but not necessarily in the context of what the student is expected to know. Like,
See.
I asked it to do a convergence problem, like whether
Yeah.
a series converges. It was very common for calculus 2 students to be able to do, whether a series converges. And it just numerically showed that it converged. Like, it just computed a bunch of terms.
Right.
And then I had to specify like, oh, well, a student's not supposed to be able to, that's not like how they got to do it. They have to prove it through like theorems and things like that, right? So I had to put more bounds on it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my understanding with the AI, and you can probably address this, is that the more you need to bound the question individually, the more processing power it's to take, the more expensive those kinds of runs are. And it's hard for it to retain enough knowledge and to scale that way. So like right now, when I ask it to do something, it's just pulling from its general knowledge. But
Right.
if I were to ask it to pull it from very specific sources, and I load up a bunch of documents and videos and lessons, say like, I teach it this way, I want you to answer it this way, I also want you to look at their past
Right.
answers to give them
Right.
context for it, that like, I don't know if that is the direction that the AI system would go, nor like how efficient, because then it gets more expensive to do some of those processing and queries and things like that. I believe that's my understanding. The more
Yeah.
data you feed it, the more expensive it is
Mhm.
to run those queries. And so
Mhm.
I'm not totally
Mhm.
sure how personalized it'll ultimately get. It's a great
Right.
tool,
Right.
but like I see it as like, you have to filter it and you have to understand what the tool is doing. It's not something I'm comfortable just giving to a student, say like, this guy talks just like me, just ask him instead of asking me.
Yes.
That would be really cool, but I don't know if that like is going to get there, and I'm not entirely sure how it would get there.
That's true. That's right, and it's really fair. I think the base models, even the most fine-tuned models that's out there, is very general, and they're supposed to be able to serve a large number of customers with their queries. It's like the curse of the median, right? Like it has to be average, kind of, in a lot of things to do that. But I do think that the personalization, like the way you described, it captures it perfectly. That if the model has everything about you and then the student, and be able to use that effectively to come up even with a single sentence that kind of satisfies your conditions, I think that's definitely possible. The cost argument is also very true. However, we like the first ChatGPT launched in 2022, and we were the like one of the like first users of its API in our first company. I think it's about 1,000 times cheaper now than it was in 2022, and that's about a 2-year difference. I'm just
Yeah.
amazed. Like we used to pay so like our bill kept going down month over month from OpenAI, even though our usage was increasing because they kept finding new ways to optimize their systems, make the models a lot more efficient. And I think there's probably still a lot to go to optimize.
Mhm.
But there's going to be some definite like definitive limits to how much. I just hope it's going to be affordable enough,
Yeah.
at least better than what
That
we
would be
have.
really exciting because
Yeah.
I actually had parents say like, "Hey, is there an AI Alan avatar?" Because like they're like, "My kid
Yes.
loves the way you explain things." And one of the things about the generic explanations is like when you're
Yeah.
solving a math problem,
Yeah.
there's like lots of ways to solve the problem,
You're still my
right? And like
question. Okay.
yeah, and there and like when a student I can interpret it because I understand the different ways to solve a problem. But for a
Right.
student, it's like, oh, like I like that's not how it was explained to me. And I'm like, yeah, like you can do it that way, but that's probably
Yeah.
not the way I would suggest you do it.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, anyway, the parent asked, like, is there just like a Alan AI avatar that like they could
Yeah.
ask and engage with? I'm like, man, that would make my life a lot easier, of course,
Yeah.
if that was the case. But like we'll
All
see.
right, cut the episode. Let's build it now. Okay. Well, my question was actually relevant. Actually, I had one of the questions written down was that is there a future Alan AI tutor? But we can start with like how are you using AI in your business and in your teaching, and potentially I like this question, which is back in 2022 in December when the first like a viable AI, the ChatGPT launched. Like, what was your reaction to it? And what happened since then?
Yeah, I was really it was just so interesting that it could answer a query for me and
Yeah.
digest a huge amount of information
Right.
down because it's like I'm pretty good at that. So I still use Google a lot, but a lot of times now when I have a specific question, I go to ChatGPT because with the Google search, you have to digest a huge amount of information and parse out which
Sure.
link is relevant to you.
Right.
And the biggest thing to me was like how impressive ChatGPT was at digesting a lot of information, spitting out something that like, oh, that makes sense. Like I
Mhm.
understand where that's coming from. Well, yeah, there were a lot of bugs in there too.
Yeah. At the
And there
beginning.
still are in some senses. So like I
Mhm.
was very impressed for its ability to just simplify like a complex problem. Like, I mean, I'm
Right.
just yesterday, I'm setting up a Minecraft server and I'm just
Yeah.
like, look, I don't like what I'm having this problem. Can you suggest some things, some
Yeah.
fixes to me? Like they're not able to find the server and it shot out and then one of them finally fixed it. I was like, okay, cool, that made sense. Whereas I could have done a Google search,
Yeah.
read through some Reddit forums or posts and stuff like that, and might have taken me a little longer. I would have gotten there eventually, but
Yeah.
so that part has been really amazing. In terms of the business, um I have it do a few things for me, and I've played around with it. I've explored it a lot because it's an important part. I use it for question generation. I think I think I read an article as a great analogy. You got to think of it as like a very unpaid intern. It's like he'll do exactly what you tell him and no more. Like, right? Like if it's like you have to keep giving him refined instructions, right,
Yes.
with the question.
Yeah.
So it always has to be filtered through that lens.
Mhm.
I have had it because it does image processing. It does a pretty decent job. I have had it check some students' work. I
Right.
never direct, but I don't trust it enough to directly send it, like to have the student directly use it to check their work because it
Right.
does make a lot of mistakes too.
That's
Like it
that's right.
comes, it misinterprets, especially when it comes to images. It can kind of read it. It's a lot of times it's pretty good, but
Yeah.
it's not reliable enough that I could just like say like I'm just going to take this and give it back to the student.
Right.
What I usually do is if I'm just checking a student's work,
Mm.
if ChatGPT computes the same answer as the student that and I know the student well enough that I'm reasonably sure that they did that part right,
Yeah.
then I will probably say like it's fine. When
Mhm.
there's a discrepancy between what ChatGPT says is the answer and what the student came up with the answer,
Yeah.
then it will be like, let me go study and to see who's right. And I would say 80% of the time ChatGPT is correct, but that
Yeah.
20% of the time the student was correct
Yes.
and ChatGPT did not answer the question correctly and made a pretty fundamental mistake.
Yes.
So that's why I still have to screen it. I don't expose any of my students directly to it. I've played with it for that exact reason to say like, is this good enough for me
Mhm.
to trust it for my students to ask questions and get help with it?
Yes.
And the answer is unless it's like unless it can do better than me, like, or like very, very high degree of accuracy, like it's not at that level.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
I
assume that the topic that you also teaching is also one of the more complex topics, the AP physics and AP exams, compared to maybe some simpler topics that people tutor.
Yeah, yeah, it does require a lot of nuance in language and
Right.
interpreting the picture correctly. Like
Right.
sometimes it'll just plug in the wrong value of an integer because
Yes.
it couldn't discern from the image and the wording like what the
Yeah.
spacing was supposed to be.
That's right.
Not like dimension wise, but like the number of spacings there were. Like
Right.
that's a very example that I was like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, it didn't understand that they were 4 apart. It thought it was just like 1 apart, and so it plugged in
Yeah.
1 instead of 4. Again, like not like terrible, but I can see how it just reading the words
Yeah.
just sort
Yeah.
of made that assumption without like
Yeah.
understanding the diagram and context. So I agree with you. It is probably more complex than just like a simple algebra question or SAT style questions.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think validation is really important. But yeah, on the teaching side, that's what I use the AI for.
That's awesome. Awesome. And so now, I guess going back to the Alan AI tutor idea. I mean, I think there's been a lot of fascination with AI characters. Character
Mhm.
AI, one of the companies, is a multi-billion-dollar company now, and there's just people just creating avatars of random characters. So, do you see this happening among tutors to be able to, put their face, put their digital persona out there, paired with some content for students to use?
Yeah, I think that would be the future. If you honestly could, it'll be about like the data sets that are going to the AI, not the
Right.
general AI, but the data sets that feed it.
Right.
So, I look forward to the day that there's an AI avatar that can answer the questions the way I would answer it. Like the
Yeah.
test is really like if I would answer it the exact same way that the AI system would answer it,
Yeah.
then like it's perfect at that point, right? It has
Yes.
perfected what it is that what I would want out of it.
Yes.
Um, that would be really cool. I'm
Mhm.
not gonna lie, like that I think would be the future, and if that's possible, early on I explored with some people to say like, is it possible to just like I have all these videos because on YouTube, but I also
Yeah.
have all these
Yeah.
Loom videos of me breaking down questions. I have all these lessons. I have these notes that give a lot of
Yeah.
structure to how I teach and what I expect students to be able to do and how they should break it down. Can you feed all of that and then have something that responds in a way that's
Yeah.
like that? And like when that is answered, then then it'll be about me fine tuning that avatar model and it going out to like more and more people. Like,
That's
and that
right.
would be,
That's
I
right.
think that would be amazing. I'm not scared of that. I think that would actually be really, really powerful for students to have access to, and be able to reach more students, which is the goal of the mission of the
Yes.
business.
Yes. Fantastic. Yeah, I think this is a very, very fascinating take. I like the idea of AI tutors myself a lot, because there is people who, like, I can go to ChatGPT, ask it to explain something, but there's people who do it so much better. Like even a simple prompt of going saying, explain it like a Richard Feynman would completely give you a different type of response than if you just ask it simply, just explain to me. So I think people giving it their own voice, giving it their own content, giving it their own instruction styles would really make a difference, I think, in the way people receive it as well. So I'm excited. I think it's possible. So we'll see when it comes by. Last question I want to ask is that, is there anything that you think I should have asked and I did not?
Um, I no, you asked a lot of good questions. I would probably say the one thing that some people ask me are concerned about is not how AI is used for the teaching side, but how the students use AI
Right.
necessarily, and like how that can influence and what I think is important for students to learn. Because you hear all of these stories of like, oh, ChatGPT is writing essays, writing papers, and things like that. I think the future of education for students is one, critical thinking, which I think you can use AI a lot to do and help with
Mhm.
that. But honestly, if I were an English professor or a history professor or something that relied on papers, I would actually switch to presentations. Like you got to answer live, because I think a huge part of how work operates, which people don't understand. Even as an engineer, I worked as an engineer. A huge part of the job is how you communicate. It is
Right.
not what you know and how you solve problems.
Right.
It's not the technical knowledge. The
Right.
technical knowledge, yes, has to be there, but how you communicate, how you speak, how you write emails to people and talk in meetings is like that super, super important skill to like learn and nurture and develop. And so I would be okay with students using AI, but I would evaluate them probably more on their ability to answer questions on the fly in real time
Right.
in front of people and not like necessarily on paper answering questions. Like that would be like something that I would push for and encourage at a higher level, because I think that is a skill that isn't taught very well or like necessarily focused on, especially if for STEM careers, but like is super, super, super critical for the future, especially as AI gets so good at the technical knowledge.
Right. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that. I just have a few last fire rounds. So I have a couple of questions that I want you to say the first thing that comes to your mind.
Sure.
This did not require too much thinking. So I'm gonna start with a simple one, whether an SAT or ACT.
SAT.
SAT. All right. The second is you live in Washington. I live extremely like 10 minutes away from Washington, D.C. So I'm going to say city or nature?
Ooh, nature.
Nature. Okay. This is going to be a tough one. Berkeley or Stanford?
Berkeley, actually. In the boat
Okay.
in Berkeley. Yeah.
And then in the context of AI, there's three main ones: ChatGPT, Claude, and Gemini.
I use ChatGPT mostly. I haven't played with the other ones very much, but I still use ChatGPT.
Awesome. Alan, thank you so much. I hope to record maybe the next version of this episode again in the future. This was so much fun. And thanks for coming to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jam.
Appreciate it. See you soon.
Yep.
Bye.